If that hasn't gotten people to wake up yet, what will? Wake up and realize these people don't care about you. The Libertarian Party is the only party that actually cares about your rights to liberty and freedom. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Liberty Inc. podcast, your source to all things liberty in NC. And we are here today with Patrick Bowersox. He is the vice chair of the Wake County Libertarian Party. He was the chair of North Carolina for Joe Jorgensen, and he is the vice chair of the National Outright Libertarians organization. I had a chance to meet with Patrick at the North Carolina Libertarian Party convention. We kind of met in passing. It was a packed room, but we actually had some great time to sit down over lunch. My wife and I went to a little local Dominican spot there. I'm Puerto Rican, so I love food from down there. And it turns out that Patrick and Sean Haw actually walked in afterwards. So I saw, hey, I recognize you guys from convention. Why don't you come on over? We had a great lunch, great conversation. And I said to Patrick, I love what you're doing. I'd love to have you on the podcast here. A lot of times we look at kind of the uniparty and the duopoly and what they put out there. And, the Democrats like to take a lot of credit for things that the Libertarian Party has been advocating for 50 years. Patrick knows that. So Patrick, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, Mike. First off, that Dominican food was great too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, we went off on a guess on that and wound up being a good guess.
You can't go wrong. If you find a little hole in the wall Dominican place anywhere in the country, chances are it's probably going to be pretty good. At least it was up there in Greensboro.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Patrick, one of the things, and I mentioned it kind of there in the intro, but I think, a lot of libertarians may not know, I talked to a lot of libertarians. They don't know about all the different caucuses and factions and all these different groups there.
Oh, yeah.
So I'd love to just kind of start out. We talked to Travis back on episode 5 about all of the amazing work that's going on in Wake County with the largest county affiliate. But I really thought this would be a great opportunity to kind of reach out and, just kind of tell us a little bit about Outright Libertarians, how you found out about the organization, when you joined it, and just help us learn a little bit about kind of the mission and what you guys are looking to do.
Well, Outright, we are a nonprofit. We're a nonprofit outreach for the GSM, or as a lot of people still call it, the LGBTQ community, but we prefer GSM, Libertarian Party, because we feel like it's not leaving anybody out.
Sure.
We don't want to leave anybody out, and we want to grow our party, and we want to make as many people who agree with the message of liberty feel included as possible. Basically, we are the bridge between the GSM community and the Libertarian Party. So we hope to bring people to a message of liberty from the GSM community. After all, the Libertarian Party has been for marriage equality since 1971. And the Libertarian Party also went against what a lot of people were saying about homosexuality, that it was a psychological disease back then. The Libertarian Party kind of rebunked that in the early 70s as well. But we are the bridge between the GSM community and the Libertarian Party and our message. And like I said, we've been for the community since the 70s, over decades before the Supreme Court even made a decision on marriage equality.
Yeah, I mean, it's been on the right side of history really since the party's inception, right?
Exactly.
So did Outright bring you to the Libertarian Party, or were you already a Libertarian and then kind of got involved with Outright? What did that process look like for you personally?
I came to the Libertarian Party during the Trump-Hillary Clinton election. Okay. And I was kind of on the fence to the Libertarian Party for a while. I grew up in Connecticut. I would be what you call a New England Republican. Okay. Someone who was very fiscally conservative, very, very socially libertarian. I would say what you would call it now, but socially more on the left. So I kind of came down and I went to some NC GOP stuff, and I'm like, wow. This really isn't for me. I said nothing personal. It's just I'm used to the clear separation of church and state. Like, yeah, you can go to church and preach all you want, but I'm really not into bringing that into my politics.
Sure. Yeah. And when did you get involved with outright libertarians, and when did outright libertarians kind of start?
I got involved in outright and shortly thereafter when I joined the party.
Okay.
It was actually kind of interesting. I had went to about 2 or 3 libertarian meetups and met some folks, and I found out they were doing Raleigh Pride like that 2 weekends from there, and I got introduced to Eric Rodsepp,
okay,
who was on the outright board back then. And he was basically taking care of the North Carolina operations for outright. And I'd gone to a couple Pride Fests and just loved the message outright was trying to bring. And just it made sense to me, essentially.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I think is interesting, because I grew up in a pretty progressive county in Florida, Broward County, notoriously one of the bluest counties in Florida. And that was just something, I grew up, I was a drama dork, as they called us, right? I was in all of the musicals and all of the plays. I had a lot of, gay and lesbian friends. And that was one of the things that when I looked at kind of the GOP, right, and the Republican side of things, where, everyone's just a person, right? Like who you fall in love with at the end of the day, how does that impact anybody? And that's one of the things that I love about the Libertarian Party, because I'm a financial advisor by trade. So naturally, I think that, I don't want to use the word fiscal conservative, so to say. I would just say fiscal responsibility, right? As a financial planner, I try to teach personal financial responsibility to clients. So to see the government kind of setting an example of that is something that's big for me. But one thing I do notice, right, I'm still friends with all my friends from high school. In fact, most of the people I'm friends with in Facebook, like, I have to know you in real life if I'm going to add you, right? I know some people have thousands. I got a few hundred people, but everybody on my friend list is somebody I know and care about and will have a personal conversation with. But I do notice that a lot of my friends in the community tend to vote blue, right? Vote Democrat. Which is sad when you think about it, right? Where, just going back to 2008 when Obama became president, he was not for gay marriage, even in 2008 when he got elected. And the Democrats are acting like, that they've been allies to the GSM community forever, when they haven't, right? As recently as 2008, they thought that you shouldn't be able to marry who you want. And I tend to be a minarchist. I take the approach of, honestly, I'd rather just see government out of marriage entirely, right? Like that's between people in their faith or a person and their partner, and that's it, and handle all of the rest of it with contract law, right? Like that's, a contract between individuals. But until we get there, right? Until we get to the point where government is out of marriage, the only option is equality under the law, right? Until government's out of it, you got to treat everybody equally. And I see so many people that are my friends there. What's kind of the bridge, right? Where when we look like that, what are some of the things that Outright is doing to kind of reach, knowing that I would probably guess most of the GSM, if you had to break it down, community probably votes blue as opposed to red.
The split is definitely between blue and red. It's very large, but we are starting to see, particularly with the younger GSM community, that there's a lot of distaste towards both old traditional parties. They really don't want anything to do with either of them. So, and basically our mission is to get out there at GSM events, get out there at prides, and be out there every single year, not just election years.
Right.
Because you'll find that the Democrats and the Republicans try to play this kind of, well, it's not really an election year. I don't know if we really need to be out there. We need to be out there every single year.
Sure.
And show that we want this. We want the community. We want to show them that liberty is the best way. And I think that by seeing us there and being active and we've actually have gone to a kind of a state outreach operation. We want to have strong relationships with state LPs, and if state LPs have questions about how to table at events like Pride, we want to be there for answers for them. North Carolina, we're very fortunate in North Carolina to have very strong state affiliate and a lot of strong county affiliates.
Yeah.
So we're very fortunate there, but I would love to see us get there in a lot of other states too.
Yeah, no, I agree, and that's one of the things where I was seeing where so someone even had mentioned that there was a Pride in a small county, and they were like, we want to see active there, and granted it was like a brand new affiliate, like they were like a couple weeks old, so but that's one of the things that I think is really an opportunity, right, where and I think think North Carolina, where we're a purple state, right, where we tend to go, but we've got some red counties and some blue counties, and some places that are less purple than other places in North Carolina. And I think through that, right, and I see that as an opportunity, right, where if you're red in a blue county or blue in a red county, with your baseline ideology, if you just think in terms of the uniparty, where if you can be educated to libertarianism, whether it's through LPNC, whether it's through Outright, whether it's through any other, local libertarian activist group, I think that's really the path, right? Where we can get our affiliates, whether they're county affiliates, the entire state affiliate out there, where we can show people, hey, we're the true inclusive party, right? Where, where you get out, you're out there at events, and that's one of the things that, I feel like one of the ways that Democrats were able to kind of take credit for being on the right side of the issue is because almost we probably didn't really oppose that, right? Where now Democrats can go to the Pride events and be like, hey, we're here, Republicans aren't. And if the Libertarians don't show up to be like, hey, we've been here way longer than you, it almost helps them sell that narrative of kind of continuing.
Oh, absolutely. And I think what we can use in North Carolina particularly is the Democratic Party opposed marriage equality in North Carolina. And kind of what has the Democratic Party really done to reverse that? And what's the answer to that? I don't really see anything that they've done to oppose that or overturn that.
Which makes it funny where, at the national level, the Democrats make it seem like, that's their main focus and that it's unanimous. But as you point out, hey, in North Carolina, they're still kind of playing to the social and cultural,
very, very, very much still socially on, I don't want to say conservative, but kind of the religious social aspect.
Yeah, I mean, they're out, North Carolina, they call it the Bible Belt. There's a reason that there's a reason behind that. I'd like to think that as time goes on that, society moves kind of further away from that, more towards separation of church and state. And, again, I believe in freedom of religion, believe what you want. But, the fine line is, if your beliefs are now impacting other people, that's when it becomes a problem, right?
Exactly.
You can believe what you want as long as you're not going to, harm in any way someone else for not believing that thing.
Absolutely.
And you actually, for anybody who's listening who didn't know this, Patrick actually gave a talk at the LPNC convention. And he specifically brought up, the talk was about what I think is a pretty important topic, and I feel like I'd be doing everybody a disservice if I didn't bring it up for us to kind of chat about it a little bit here on the podcast. And it's something unique, right? It's something that, if you're not a member of the GSM community, you probably don't even know about this, but it's something that is, being called the panic defense. Quite frankly, it's a load of bullshit, but that's me, libertarian, saying that. Patrick, I'd love for you to just kind of tell everybody what is the panic defense, and what can we do to try and spread awareness of it and ultimately get rid of this abhorrent legal strategy.
Well, the panic defense is a defense that has been used several times. in courts that basically can be used against members of the GSM community, whether you're gay, lesbian, transgender, etc. Anywhere on the spectrum, anywhere on the GSM spectrum, that basically they can use the fact that your identity, your sexual identity or sexual preference caused them to get so panicked that they made a rash decision and made a decision to harm you. But to me, that sounds like premeditated murder. I mean, by definition of law, you're upset, but you've premeditated what you're going to do to this individual.
Yeah, I mean,
and you're violating their rights. So, we always say that your rights end. The old saying.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what's so crazy about that is, like, someone cuts you off in traffic, that pisses you off or gets you upset, right? Like, you don't say, oh, that guy, I got so enraged because you cut me off on traffic. And, the practical sense of this is, someone, I think I saw an article where, someone was, essentially hit on, someone who was straight was hit on by someone who was not, and, either, attacked and either brutally beat or murdered that person.
Yeah.
And to me, that I don't understand it, right? I don't understand murder in general, but, for an attorney to think that this is something that is even worth presenting to a jury, right? Like a normal person, like, I'm married, right? Granted, I don't go out to bars and drink or anything like that, but if I went out to a bar somewhere and my wife was at home for some reason, again, doesn't happen, but if it did, and a woman hit on me, right? I'd be like, sorry, I'm married, I'm flattered, right? If a man hit on me, I'd do the same thing. Like I'm married, I'm not interested. And even if you're offended, right? Like, even take it that case where someone is, hey, hey, no, I'm not into that, and walk away. But to think I'm going to cause harm to another person, and one, like, as libertarians, we believe in the non-aggression principle. It doesn't really impact us, but there's a lot of people who don't live by that, right? But if someone were to do something like that, I just don't understand how they can go there. And what boggles me is, how can a jury listen to this and somehow assign any value to that, right? How do you assign value to that? Now, is this something like, has it been used successfully? Is it actually getting people?
There hasn't been not in recent years. It hasn't been used very successfully in recent years, and it's been brought up because the situation I talked about happened in Tennessee. It was a firefighter, and the guy, everybody was walking, minding their own business, and he asked the guy if he would like to get a cup of coffee, and the guy was just so enraged by this that, how dare you think I'm gay? It was like, well, I don't know what identifies us as being gay or straight or transgender or whichever. I mean, we don't need to attach labels to ourselves. Like, we don't go like, hi, I'm Patrick, I'm gay, or hi, I'm Mike, I'm straight. We don't do that in society. And
we shouldn't have to,
exactly.
We shouldn't have to, for one, right? But yeah.
But they're actually surmising that this person is looking at using the panic defense in this case. Now, what a good friend of mine in the LP had suggested was we approach the North Carolina Bar Association to see if they would be interested in basically making this defense not usable in the courts of North Carolina.
That would be a fantastic win. I mean, I would think it should be common sense and should be used everywhere, right? Like, we shouldn't have to petition the bar to do that, right? I mean, this is, to me, it's just common sense, right? But then again, I kind of think, sort of the same way where, people use insanity as a defense. Like, you killed another human being. Doesn't it almost take some degree of, that shouldn't be a defense in my mind either.
Well, I agree.
In most cases, in some cases, maybe, if it's someone who is, maybe, whatever, unrelated. But, I think, is there a petition started? Is that something that,
We are actually in talks. Joe Garcia and I are in talks about that. LPNC has made that a priority to work on. Actually, Brian Irving, who's also in Wake County, is on board with that as well. So it's something that we're trying to find a route to decide whether it's best to try to bring it to the North Carolina House or try to bring it to the North Carolina Bar Association. The only problem with bringing it to North Carolina House is you have to have Republican support.
Sure.
Because they're not going to bring up a bill that only has Democratic support.
Right.
And I'm concerned that you may not have enough Republicans and Democrats to support it in this state.
Well, and I almost wonder, if just government, right? Even functioning government is still slow, right? Where if the Bar Association, where I think of it, where, I'm in the financial sector, where I look at it and, regulatory agencies that are private, even, like the CFP board, I'm a CFP, the CFP board, when they put out guidance and things like that for my profession, I put a lot more weight on that. So, I mean, my thought is, if the Bar Association took a stance on that, where they're saying, hey, we don't think that this is valid, it almost wouldn't matter what the government does, right? The government. So I like that idea. And, at some point in the future, Patrick, I can't promise the viewers that it'll be in the description from day one if the petition hasn't started. But if you're watching this video at some point, 6 months, a year from now, as soon as this petition gets started, I will link it in the description down below here on YouTube so that you can sign the petition. If you know me personally, as soon as Patrick tells me the petition's out there, I'll not only be signing it but I will be sharing it to get as many signatures as we can on that, because it's 2021, and the idea that something like that could even be used, whether it's and I would hope that and granted, maybe, if it was used in the 60s, 70s, 80s, it was probably a lot more successful back then. And that's sad, but, we have made some progress on that front. I'm glad to hear that it doesn't appear to be working to get people off. But my concern would be it might still be relevant in sentencing, and it shouldn't. But that's one of the things that, I could sadly, just sadly looking at humanity, I could see that there's enough people that may go lighter on a sentence for that. And that's bullshit. I mean, that's bullshit. Yeah. And that's a problem, where if we can get the North Carolina Bar Association to say, look, we don't believe that this is something that should ever even be presented in a court of law, and that stops that, then we don't have to worry about reduced sentencing over bullshit, because that's what it is. Man, go ahead.
And like I said, members of the GSM community shouldn't be afraid of being who they are.
No, nobody should be afraid of who they are. Whether GSM or not, right? Nobody should be afraid to be for any reason. And unfortunately, it just disproportionately impacts the GSM community, and that's a travesty. It truly is a travesty. That there's things there. Has there been anything on that front? I know that the focus of the podcast is normally local to North Carolina, but knowing that, that Outright, you're the vice chair of Outright across the United States, right? Or is there anything, have other states taken some action on this?
Oh, yes. I believe that there are a number of states who have already eliminated this and will not allow it as use in court.
How did they do that? Did they go through the bar, or did they go through the general?
Through the state legislator.
Okay.
State legislator. And they went through the House and the Senate and got it approved by the governor. I was living in Connecticut when it was passed.
Okay.
Connecticut, it was passed in the late 90s, I believe, very early 2000. But it was passed by a Republican governor and signed by a Republican governor. So, I mean, which I kind of joke with some people. I'd take a Connecticut Republican over a North Carolina Democrat any day of the week.
Well, it's funny because I think through podcast episode 4, right, where we just had this one where it was on the Kelsey Smith Act, right, where and that's and we look at that one. It's a little bit different, and not unrelated to this particular one, but it's one that's been passed in 28 states now, and it just went through North Carolina unanimously. And quite frankly, the law scares the shit out of me. The law scares the shit out of me out of how it's going to be used and abused a decade in the future. But is that something, with regards to this panic defense? Is there any, because I look at the Kelsey Smith Act and it's almost like template legislation, right? 28 states have done it. So it's like, is there something out there where we look at one of these states that has already passed a way to ban that? Is there something out there? Because I feel like, the same way I view it as they rammed the Kelsey Smith Act through, if we could get kind of national support or local support around some kind of reform, form template for a law that does this, I almost wonder if that's the way to do it, right? Where you kind of have this law and kind of just push it through. Is that something that's there, or is that something,
That I really can't answer. I know it would have to be brought up in the North Carolina House or the Senate, and it would have to be brought up for a bill, and it would have to have some kind of Republican support and enough Democratic support to even be brought up to be talked about.
I almost wonder, and granted, I'm mostly sticking to North Carolina. I care most about local politics, but I almost wonder if that's something that that they should kind of go the route that they did with the Kelsey Smith Act, right? Name it after a victim, right? Someone who was who was either abused or murdered, and then the state essentially allowed it or let someone, if you take something like that and you kind of put it around that particular story, then it brings all of the history of the story on top of it, right, where it comes through. I almost wonder if that's kind of a route maybe we should try to look at to get that, because in 2021 this is something that should not be happening.
Absolutely
at all.
I agree.
And I would love to see, you've got my full support and my platform if you guys ever kind of get something going that needs, public voice.
The good news is I've actually announced I'm going to be running for North Carolina House 37.
Okay.
As a Libertarian. So it's a long shot, but hey, you never know.
Well, and with that, everyone who says it's a long shot, and when I talk to Republicans and Democrats, they say that about a lot of things with Libertarians. But the reality is, I'd rather take a long shot than no shot, right? Like exactly. if you don't run, you've got a 0% chance. Or even if you got a 0.0001% chance, it's infinitely better than 0 chance.
Exactly.
So that would be for House, for House of North Carolina, right? Not okay. Yeah. And I think that's something that that we need more of. We need more libertarians in state government. And maybe it starts at the local level. We need a lot more libertarians at county and city level government too. But before we really think, we want to run candidates for president and Senate, but the likelihood of them winning anything in the very near future is pretty low. However, county level and then eventually state, I still think that's the route to go, right? Is first turn a county gold or a city gold, and then let that kind of expand until eventually there's a gold state, right? Where when the national politics are coming in and they're like, can we come to North Carolina and this is, the gold state taken by the Libertarian, even if it's the only state, right? But as soon as you win one, now all of a sudden people are kind of paying attention. And I feel like that's the path to getting national Libertarians elected is we got to start winning big at the local and state level first. If we can't win local and state elections, it's silly to think that we can win national elections. And
Absolutely.
There's some libertarians who will, who will get very mad at me for saying that, I'm sure.
No, we got to be realists too. We got to be realists.
Yeah, it is. So within that district, right? Because I know for House there, what is the district makeup there, right? Because I know I was talking to John Mons, and at the time of this recording, the podcast hasn't gone live, but he talked a lot about when you're kind of doing these, you kind of have to do that research on, for a libertarian to win, you kind of have to see the typical voting patterns of that area. Have you kind of looked into there as far as?
Yeah, it's controlled by a Republican now.
Okay.
It was controlled by a Democrat previously, so it was sort of viewed as a steal by the Republicans.
Okay.
But it was they spent a lot of money. The Republicans spent a lot of money on the campaign, as did the Democrat. Both of them did, and it was actually kind of a rather dirty campaign ran by more. A lot of people think the Republican ran a little bit dirtier than the Democrat did. There were some mailers sent out that were a little.
I think they're both pretty dirty. I was talking to Shannon Bray, and on Shannon Bray's, he said they were bringing really dirty stuff.
Yeah, but that's politics.
Yeah. So on that, with your what are you running on, right? On the podcast, you're going to be a libertarian candidate in the state, kind of. What's why Patrick Bowersox? If there's a potential voter listening here, whether they lean Republican, lean Democrat, or firmly Republican or Democrat, why should they vote for Patrick Bowersox?
Well, I want to run on criminal justice reform. I want to do that. I'm looking at a few other things. We actually have a presentation on nuclear power for Wake County Libertarians, and I want to see that presentation. Nuclear power could be a big thing too, and increasing our footprint with nuclear here, and kind of saying, hey, we're nuclear power is 32% of the state right now. If we can get that up to 40%, let's talk about lowering some home energy bills for people and putting some more money in people's pockets.
It's funny.
We can get a more efficient way of power.
It's funny how the Democrats are kind of stealing the whole green piece of the conversation, but they just completely ignore nuclear energy. And the reality is nuclear energy, especially if we continue to invest in it and allow technological innovation to continue.
Sorry about that.
Oh, that's all right. Yeah, no, like you think about it, nuclear reactors have come quite a long way from when they first started. And if we would continue to invest in that, and I think of it, 10 years from now, right? If we ignore nuclear for 10 years from now, nuclear technology is going to be pretty similar to how it is now. But if we embrace it and look for better disposal methods of spent, those are some of the concerns. And I've looked at the science and the data behind it. And, there's some fears there with nuclear, but hey, there's fears there with coal and all the other types too. But
the coal ash crisis.
Yeah, but if they don't invest in nuclear, if we don't as a country and as a state decide to invest in nuclear, that technology is not going to get better. But if we invest in it and you allow innovation and competition, they're going to find better ways of disposal, better ways to run those, even cleaner. But it's, as far as energy goes, it's some of the cleanest energy. And, North Carolina, we've got a good source from nuclear power as is. But, if we were able to get to 100% nuclear power, right, we would have lower energy bills. Just we wouldn't have to worry about so much about, granted, Texas was the one, the national example of what happens when all of the other methods kind of fail. But I don't think that happens with a nuclear power grid.
No, I don't. I completely agree with you.
So,
I mean, it's something I have to research into more, but the bits I have researched, and everybody uses the Nakashima and the 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl as examples.
Sure.
But I mean, if you look at France, for example, uses nuclear a lot, and as does Iceland, I believe.
Yeah. And so, there's no horror stories coming out of there. I haven't heard anything. And that's where it tells you it's a government agenda at hand, right? Where, you look at the hesitancy towards pipelines, right? But if you look at the data, it's so clear that pipelines are the safest possible way to move oil from one place to another, by far. But one pipeline problem happens, they're going to use that to attack that, and that's where I wonder. And I'm sure. Look, I get it. Republicans and Democrats have their agendas. Some of it we think is obvious. Some of it, I'm sure we don't know. I just wonder there, like, why the attack on pipelines specifically when, that's the safest way. I mean, the alternative is what? The alternative is put it in a truck, spend gas and diesel fuel moving it in much smaller quantities. So you've got thousands and thousands of trucks that are required to move this stuff as opposed to a pipeline. And how many car accidents does that cause? How many, all these other things that are potentially there. So criminal justice reform, nuclear power, kind of anything else there that we're running.
Might look at the panic defense, look at that. Looking at maybe the ABC, eliminating the ABC.
Okay.
North Carolina ABC. I've got a couple ideas, and I'm going to rely on some individuals who've ran before.
Sure.
Kind of deciding. And the beauty of being a libertarian is you can run to the right or the left.
Sure.
And you can, and with how Wake County is, I'm starting to see that running to the left might be a better idea. And the interesting thing is, we were talking about GSM rights, and I was like, as some people call it a left issue, I was like, well, I don't know that human rights is a right or left issue. It's just an issue.
Yeah.
It's an issue of liberty. It's your human rights. It's
that's giving the left way too much credit, right?
Exactly.
To say that this is their issue means that it doesn't impact anybody who's not there, and that's objectively not true. I just that is objectively not true. I know a lot of libertarians, which there's left libertarians, right libertarians, moderate. I don't care where you are. If you're a libertarian, you're going to be on the side of GSM equality. Period. Like if you're not on the side of GSM equality, then you're really not a libertarian. And I know that's kind of an ongoing joke among libertarians, calling you're not a libertarian. But the reality is you can't be for freedom for all people if you're looking at a system that is not treating people equally under the law, right? Like you're not a libertarian if you think that any group of people should not be the same as every other under the eyes of the law. But I see it even in, even with the religious right. Like, I know some people who, view themselves as conservative Christians. And even there, I know that they care about GSM equality, right? So for the left to be able to say that this is our issue, I think one, and I don't want to give Republicans, strategy, but you guys are kind of shooting yourselves in the foot by even allowing them to say that this is their issue, because it's not. It's a human issue. It's a human issue, and that's.
Well, the interesting point is Dr. Jorgensen actually said something about this, and she goes, "I don't even understand how a homophobic or transphobic libertarian can be against GSM rights." Yeah. It's an issue of liberty and freedom. I just don't understand how somebody who classifies themselves as a libertarian could be against the rights of individuals. And I'm like, wow, that is like the perfect thing.
Yeah, I mean, you're spot on. Like you can. It's antithetical to pure libertarian ideology to be against those things. And the whole thing. I think bigotry is stupid, right? It's irrational and repugnant, to use words that are out there. But the reality is, there's racist people out there. There's homophobic people out there. There's all types of bigoted people out there, right? And that's a challenging thing where you look at it and you say, yeah, that's bad. Like it's objectively bad. But the problem becomes like, how do you want the state to legislate? That's where it becomes the problem, is when the state kind of gets involved, where it's like, if someone over there is bigoted, right, as long as they're not acting upon that bigotry, and I look at it, I wouldn't want to associate with that person, right? Like if someone's racist or like look, I got gay friends that are family to me. If you come out there with homophobe, we are not going to be friends. We're not going to, I'm going to treat you politely because I treat everybody politely. It's just how I think I should be as a human, but we're not going to be friends. We're not going to hang out. We're not going to grab a beer. But I don't think that, that you should be locked in jail, for example, because you've got stupid viewpoints, right? Like I see people with stupid viewpoints on all kinds of things that I look.
Oh yeah. And unfortunately, if you give them a platform, they're just gonna run with it.
they can. But that's spot on, where even if someone is, a homophobic libertarian, so people say, oh, there are. Like there's homophobic Republicans, homophobic libertarians, homophobic Democrats. There's just homophobic people. Hopefully there stops being. Hopefully enough people realize this is stupid, it's irrational, and hopefully society does away with that naturally. Yeah.
And I think we're seeing it. It's very much because even the amount of people who consider themselves Republicans, they overwhelmingly support the Marriage Equality Act. I mean, we're starting to see it, and it's really becoming kind of an issue of the past. I mean, unfortunately, it still exists, but it's getting better. The world's a better place than it was in the 60s or the 70s. I mean, I remember in the 70s, Jimmy Carter said people who are gay have a psychological disorder. I was like, wow, that's a sitting U.S. president saying that about a community of people.
Right, of people that you represent. It's not just your citizens, and that's scary. That's really scary when you think about it, that the people in power are, because it's one thing if you have a bigoted person down the street who's a bigoted neighbor. You could just be like, look, yeah, that's my asshole bigoted neighbor. It's another thing when that person is in a position where they're able to take their hatred and enact legislation that impacts people. And that's a real problem, where I think the goal should be, until we're able to get rid of all forms of bigotry by winning that war of ideas, which again, I think we're winning, right? I really do. I think it's one of those things that within another generation or two, it's going to be, because I see it now where, I look at, people who are in their 20s, right? Where their parents were bigoted. They're not. Like, that shows we're winning, right? Like, that shows we're winning. And I hate to say it, because but the reality is, as time goes on, people die. I feel like that's an ideology that hopefully will die off, right? But the only way we do that is by, having left, right, center, and everything in between all showing that unified front that this is not okay socially, even if it's okay legally, right? It's not okay socially, and legally it has to be equal across the board, whether you like it or not. It's got to be equal, and I think we're getting closer to that. So,
well, I think education too is key, and I think that's a big reason why Outright's out there, to educate, and as I was told by Spike and Joe, is win hearts and minds. It's not about being right; it's about winning hearts and minds with your arguments, and you could change some people. You could change some people, and people go, maybe I was wrong about that, And I mean, that's basically what Outright is about. We want people, Libertarian Party. We want people to come on board and join us. And you don't have to be in the GSM community to be a member of us. You can just be an advocate for the community.
Yeah, no, and that was something that when we had our conversation over lunch, I talked to you. I'm a member of Outright as well. And I look at it, if you're an ally, right, and really. I hate to say this. If you're a libertarian, right? If you're a libertarian, this is a freedom issue, right? This is an equality under the law, freedom for people to be who they are. You don't even have to agree with or like who they are, but if you're a libertarian, you should be for freedom of all people. That, and look, maybe I'm just a guy who's, doing that. Oh, you're not but truly look deep inside. If you care about equality of people, especially from a lens of under the state, right? Under the state, you have to have equality. And that's the thing. If you know, I know when we had our conversation, I was very quick to join outright because allies are needed, right? You know, at the end of the day, the GSM community is a minority, right? From a pure percentage standpoint, the way that we amplify that voice is through allies that are in the majority joining forces so that combined is either a majority or is able to amplify those voices. So that's huge. Well, Patrick, I know kind of on the time front there, I kind of want to wrap to the point where I go to my final question. This is kind of, even though the podcast is new, I have a closing question that's been unanimous throughout all of these, and I kind of find it's been a fun question and always get some fun discussion. So I know you're a libertarian. We stand against things like totalitarianism and authoritarianism. But I want you to put a little suspension on that for just a moment. And I want you to reach over and grab your invisible dictator crown and pop that dictator crown on your head. And you are dictator for one command. So with the stroke of the pen, a declaration of your voice, you are able to implement one change. It could be something small, it could be something massive, but you have the authority to sort of will any one thing into existence at either the local, state level, national, or even global. We'll give you a global authoritarian dictatorship power for one single thing. What would you do and why, Patrick Bowersox?
I honestly think I would get rid of the panic defense. I would find a way for it to go away.
Okay.
And just people not even have it in their mind to use it. I mean, and this is speaking completely against everything I believe by using force, but just convince everybody like, hey, that's not a defense. You don't have the right to hurt others. First off, you're violating the NAP, non-aggression principle. Yeah. And second off, you're identifying someone for who they are and attacking them for who they are because they've done something that was probably completely innocent, and a normal, rational person would just go, "Oh, hey, I'm flattered I was approached or hit on by you, but I'm not interested. But thank you so much. A normal person would be like, wow, that made my day. That made me feel good about myself."
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Or even if they're just a shitty person, even if they just respond with a, hey, piss off and walk away, right? Like that's better than,
Well, it's better than killing somebody.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't do that. I think everybody should be nice to everybody, treat them how you should be treated. But, even if you're a jerk, like, just be a jerk, but don't hurt someone, right?
Exactly.
And, since that's dictatorial power, I'm kind of giving you, the power of the universe. So I think, you snapping your fingers and changing it in the minds of humanity, it would, instantly accomplish all of that. So thank you for that. A couple of things I did want to kind of plug here, Patrick. So one, if you want to learn more and possibly join and support, it's if I believe correctly, it's www.outrightUSA.org. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
Perfect. And Patrick, if someone wanted to, if someone wanted to learn more, I know you've been very willing to chat and communicate with me. Are you on Twitter or Facebook, or if they wanted to reach out to you?
I'm on Facebook, and if anybody sees me and has any questions, you can reach out to me, and you can also reach out to anybody on the Outright board too. Ashley Shade, our chairwoman, is wonderful. We have other wonderful people in our group, and anybody would be happy to answer any questions for you or help you out with anything. And we're at your service to help you out.
Well, thank you so much for all you're doing, Patrick. Thank you for the work you're doing in Wake County, for the work you're doing with Outright Libertarians. Anybody listening, please head on over to www.outrightUSA.org. Consider joining, consider donating. Again, the reality is If we want to make sure that Outright is assisting county and state affiliates nationwide and making sure that we're able to table at these events and reach members of the GSM community and show them that Democrats are not the answer for them, that libertarians are, the way you do that is by donating your time, talent, and treasure. So please consider a donation, consider getting involved, and consider signing up. Patrick, thank you so much. Any closing thoughts for our listeners today?
Just win hearts and minds. That's the biggest thing. Just it's not about winning the argument. It's about getting that message of liberty plugged in everyone's head, and win hearts and minds, because they're going to remember you for being nice, not for being forceful.
That's right. Well, Patrick, thank you so much for coming on the show. When the campaign gets kind of moving along, I'd love to have you back on the show, to talk more specifically about your campaign there. Again, we need more libertarian voices, and thank you so much for coming on the show today. I appreciate you. I appreciate all of the work you're doing, to help fight for the rights of the GSM community and to bring members of the GSM community and allies of the GSM community to libertarianism, the Libertarian Party, and broadly turning them into liberty-minded individuals. So thank you so much. To all of our listeners, thank you so much. We will see you next Sunday, 6 o'clock Eastern Time. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.